Hello and welcome to day 9 of my 10-day sketchbook challenge. There's one more day left for this 10 days challenge, and then pretty soon after that, we're gonna dive right into the 100 days of making comics. So for my second to last video, I thought I'd talk a little bit about art block and tips on how to combat with that, or not to really deal with that anymore. And it makes sense since I'm almost done with a sketchbook challenge, though it was a short one. And perhaps you've taken this journey with me, and you might have felt that you had some struggles in coming up with ideas. So how do you deal with art block? There are so many thoughts and ideas for dealing with art block. I think one of the more common one is keeping like a sketchbook, just keeping a sketchbook of doodles, or trying to keep up with a daily habit so that way you get used to fighting against your art block. But I just wanted to talk about maybe one that you may have not mentioned or think of before, and that is your way thinking of how you learn. One of the things that you do need to consider is that you have to have some sort of mental clarity, because your brain is constantly processing information all the time. And you also need to have a sort of mental awareness about how you're feeling at that time, because maybe your art block is not actually, you're not thinking of you're having an art block, like you don't feel like drawing or you don't know what to draw. Maybe your art block is really just you don't feel like doing anything. Those days where you just want to lay down, or you're just not feeling well, and you feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't, feel bad. I should use up the time to draw. Sometimes when moments like those happen, go ahead, take a walk, maybe eat some food, something. You might be hungry, you don't even realize it. You might be deficient in something. Take a nice shower. I like to take a nice hot shower. Others like to take a bath, listen to music, do something else, because worrying about you not being able to draw at that moment, it's okay. It's okay. You'll have those days. Let it be. Go to sleep. Wake up the next morning. You probably will be flowing with ideas. So it's okay if you can't draw at that moment. No need to force it. It's not an art block. It's just your mind needs a rest. So let's not talk about that part. But how about when you feel fine, you feel energized, maybe even restless, but you don't know what to draw? Like, what am I supposed to do today? Or you're trying to draw and it's just not coming out right. One of the ideas that's probably are spreading around, and that this is a good idea, and this will help you to not have art block, is that if you feel restless and you feel like drawing but you don't know what to draw, you could draw from life. Go ahead, look up some studies of the human body. I'll put a link to one of the YouTube channels that does life drawings. You could look up figure drawings, or you could look up posters of people in certain poses that might inspire you to do something completely different. You could look pose references on like places like DeviantArt or artist poses. All of those things that might, once you start drawing from life, or maybe drawing an object or a tree, or flowers, or a brick pattern or a building, once you start, like, it's kind of like giving yourself a warm-up. Maybe going at the sketchbook cold is not conducive to you thinking of a new idea. So perhaps drawing from life or drawing from reference will give you a sort of warm-up. Or perhaps you might want to flip through a sort of book or magazine or something that, it's okay if the first couple of drawings are actually mimicking what you saw, because again, it's just going to give you that warm up. This is the tip that it's kind of sort of being taught, but maybe not in the way that I'm about to explain. And that is having a doodle and listing. I tend to not really draw in my sketchbook in terms of like coming up with ideas. Like I don't know why. I don't draw. Yes, I'm an artist and I illustrate, but I don't draw on a regular basis. Other than drawing from life for practice, or if I need to problem solve, I don't sit and just draw and let my emotions flow onto the page. I don't do that. What I actually do is I'll walk around. I could be doing something, I don't know, maybe I'm cleaning a toilet, just anything. Maybe I'm listening to a podcast. I tend to listen to a lot of like business and self-help podcasts, if you haven't noticed. Maybe I'm out and about buying groceries and I saw something. I might be able to do a quick sketch at that time, and maybe I'll do a doodle. But more often than not, I'll just write down a word or a list of words, and I'll just keep writing out these words. And eventually, maybe one day, I'm like, I should do something today. What should I do? I'm not sure. So what do? I flip through my old sketchbooks or my old notebooks, maybe some sticky notes that I had written around the place, and then a word will just jump out at me, or a sentence will jump out at me, or maybe I'll misread something and it just sounded so weird, and I'll just and then the image just come to me, and I'll just start doodling and sketching. That's all you got to do. Just jot down the ideas for when your brain is, malleable. Or maybe you have the energy one time to come up with all these ideas and you don't have time to draw all this idea out. So then you just do a quick little thumbnail, a couple of thumbnails, and then write on the side a list of what to do. Oh, this is supposed to be this, and this is going to be that, and this is going to be this, and There's been several illustrations of mine where I draw a quick doodle and then I list something on the side, and it's trust me, you would not be able to understand the sketch, but I do. And months pass by, not days, not weeks, months pass by. And then I just had a day where I had energy, but I didn't know what to really draw. And I was flipping through and I read the list of the thing of what the thing's supposed to be like. It's like taking an order. I'm reading an order from my past self and my current self to draw something for my future self. So I take down the list, I see what the composition was, and I just sit there and I draw. And I listen to something, maybe some music, some podcasts. I just draw, spend the time, because I already thought of the idea at the time when I didn't have an art block, to a time that I have an art block, but I have time and I have energy. So then spend it on time. So maybe that's something you might want to consider. When you're not having an art block, when you have so many ideas, you sit there, do a rough sketch of them, and just list out all your ideas on there, because there will be a time when you feel okay to draw, but you don't know how to draw. So then you go through your list of ideas. There's no need for you to, at the moment that you're sitting to the drawing desk, that is when you're thinking about your drawings. It's okay to walk about and enjoy life, come up with your ideas at that time, and draw them later. So that's that tip. My next tip for art block that you may have not considered, that is having a project, a longer project. It's similar to my other tip in that you have a list of ideas, but in this case, you might have like what's called a creative brief. You have a general idea of what you're supposed to be drawing, and it has multiple parts. So for example, in my case, let's say I'm making the comic Cross Star. There have been parts where I don't know what I'm going to draw today, but I know I have pages to draw. I already thought of the dialogue. I've already, thought of the general story setting. So then I just sit there and I start drawing, because comics takes a long time. But because it's in the same project, your mind has already kind of like absorbed what you need to do. So it just end up coming to be almost second nature. You just go about and you just add on to that project. So maybe you had a series of illustrations. You don't know what to draw. Make another illustration in that same style. Make another illustration in that same idea and concept. There's nothing wrong. In fact, it's even better to make things in a series. You made a pretty woman wearing, a nice black dress. Make another pretty woman wearing a nice black dress, but change up the style and the design. That's okay to do, which comes to my last tip of dealing with art block. Revisit another piece that you made. Perhaps you made a piece and you liked it. You don't know. You like it so much that you're going to continue making another version of it. You like it so much that you like to update it. You like it so much that you like to expand on it. So go ahead, take an older piece. Perhaps it was a popular piece, or perhaps it's a piece that you look at it now and you're like, this has so much potential to be better. If only I had the skills back then that I have right now. Go ahead and do it over. No one's going to bother you for that. In fact, they'll be so surprised and probably inspired that if you can improve after years of practice, they can improve after years of practice. So go ahead, pick up an old illustration that you like and redo it. Or make it similar and change it up to how you would do it now. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So a bonus tip that I decided to add on that I don't personally do as much, but I know a lot of people like to do it for when they're not sure how to go about their art block. And the reason why I don't use it as much is the previous tips that I've given you is something that I do on a regular basis. If I don't know what to draw that day, I always go back and just add on to my projects. If I'm not sure of what illustration to do, I either revisit an older piece or add on to a previous piece and make it into like a collection. That's what I tend to do. This tip is for those of you who perhaps, you don't have a big project to do and you're not really enamored with old pieces that you have done and you don't feel like adding to its collection, you don't feel like redoing it. And this tip is basically reimagining someone else's artwork or design or idea. And you could take someone's actual illustration and say, this is my version of it. Or you can take a character that you like and say, this is a fan art. Or you could take something that's really different, like say you see a shape of a tree somewhere, and then you transform it into combining it with a different element, like a tree and a cat, tree cat. Or you see a shape of the flower and turn it into a woman's dress because it looks nice. Or you see a car and you think of robot, like Transformers. Those kind of things where you take something that's already in existence and you make a sort of reimagining or derivative of it. From that, you no longer are coming from like a blank mind or a blank slate. You're basically taking something that's already in existence and expanding it or changing it to something else. And sometimes doing that a couple of times will kind of like warm up your mind or your thinking process to come up with new ideas. And this is actually a really good tip, because from then on you would basically be like how a lot of concept artists kind of practice how to think of new ideas, is taking something that's existed in the real world and expanding it for their own. So those were my tips for dealing with art block that, in all honesty, after going through these a couple of times, you won't have time. I mean, I don't have time. I'm more likely to have days when I feel tired and not feeling well than I'll ever in fact, I don't think I'll ever have an art block anymore. It's just not, there's just so much out there and so many ways to work on new artwork. If there was 2 or 3 copies of me somewhere, we still would not finish all the work. So don't be having art blocks. For the most part, it doesn't exist, really. That was a time when I was younger and I had all the time in the day and I was just moseying around. But now that I don't have time, I don't get art blocks. I don't have time for it. So hope those tips were useful for you. I've kind of listed them down on the description below. So leave a comment or questions if you have any, and I'll try to read them and reply back to them. If you want to see more of my work, just Google Cetriya, Cetriya. Hope to see you in the next video. It'll be day 10, the very last day. I can get a little bit of rest, just a little bit of rest, before I get into the 100 days of making comics. Thanks again. See you next video.